As the sun slowly begins its gradual descent, golden light stretches farther across the room. The embroidery hoop catches the glow. Dust motes drift lazily through shafts of sunlight like tiny floating stars. The woman pauses for just a moment. She looks outside. Nothing remarkable happens. And perhaps that is exactly the point. Not every afternoon in history contained dramatic events. Most passed peacefully, quietly, almost invisibly. Yet it is these ordinary hours that reveal how people truly lived. And tonight, as we continue our journey, we will discover more of those forgotten afternoons through tea rooms and gardens, through handwritten letters and music played on harpsichords, through the lives of noble women, merchants' wives, artisans, and farmers across 18th century Europe. For now, simply rest in this peaceful moment, where the afternoon lingers a little longer, the birds continue their gentle songs, and history whispers, not through battles or kings, but through the calm, steady rhythm of everyday life. For many women, afternoons were also moments for quiet conversation. Neighbors visited carrying baskets of bread or fresh fruit. Family members gathered beneath trees to escape the strongest sunlight. Voices remained calm. Stories wandered from harvests to weather, from family news to village celebrations. Much of history survives through official documents, laws, wars, royal decrees, but countless ordinary conversations disappeared forever into the afternoon air. No historian recorded the jokes shared over sewing. No diary preserved every recipe exchanged between friends. Yet these gentle moments formed the true fabric of everyday life. History was not only made in palaces, it was also made around kitchen tables. Now, let us travel farther south, toward northern Italy. Here, the afternoon sunlight feels warmer. Stone houses remain pleasantly cool despite the bright summer day outside. In a shaded courtyard, another woman sits beneath climbing vines heavy with green leaves. Beside her rests a wicker basket overflowing with freshly washed linen. Rather than sewing, she folds each piece with practiced care. Tablecloths, napkins, children's shirts, aprons. Every fold is deliberate. Linen represented considerable labor, growing flax, harvesting it, spinning fibers into thread, weaving cloth, bleaching it in sunlight, washing, drying, ironing. Each step demanded time. Because fabric required such effort to produce, it was treated with deep respect. Nothing was wasted. Even scraps found new purpose. Old garments became patches. Patches became cleaning cloths. Cleaning cloths eventually became kindling for tomorrow's fire. Across Europe, windows were treasured. Glass remained expensive in many places, and large, clear panes were a sign of prosperity. Whenever possible, women chose seats near natural light. Good daylight meant finer sewing, easier reading, and less strain upon the eyes. Outside the window, the afternoon continues quietly. Children chase one another across grassy fields. A horse lazily swishes its tail beside a stone wall. Cloud shadows drift across rolling hills with such unhurried grace that it almost seems as though time itself has slowed. Inside, silence is rarely complete. The house breathes. Wood expands softly in the warmth. Floorboards whisper beneath careful footsteps. A kettle hums gently above glowing coals. these sounds become companions rather than distractions. Embroidery in the 18th century was much more than decoration. It was artistry, education, patience, memory. Young girls often began learning needlework almost as soon as their fingers became steady enough to hold a needle. Mothers taught daughters. Grandmothers corrected tiny mistakes with gentle smiles. Every stitch represented hours of practice accumulated over many years. To modernize, embroidery may seem repetitive. To those who practiced it, repetition often became comforting. The rhythm itself held value. Needle, thread, pull gently, pause, repeat. There was no notification to interrupt the moment, no telephone ringing, only birdsong drifting through an open window and the occasional creak of an old wooden chair. Imagine now that you have entered a modest country house somewhere in southern England. The front door closes softly behind you. Inside, the air smells faintly of beeswax polish, dried lavender, and freshly baked bread cooling upon a wooden table. A woman sits beside a large window. She is perhaps 30 years old. Her dress is practical rather than extravagant, made from sturdy linen dyed in muted shades of blue. Her white cap neatly gathers her hair, keeping loose strands away from her face as she works. In her lap rests an embroidery hoop. She is not rushing. Each stitch is placed with quiet precision. Tiny flowers slowly emerge across the fabric, roses, daisies, and curling vines. The sound rolls across chimneys and narrow streets before fading into the countryside beyond. Afternoon has arrived. For many women, this is not exactly a time of leisure. Instead, it is a quieter chapter of the day, a period when the urgent work of the morning gives way to slower, steadier tasks. Life in 18th century Europe was extraordinarily varied. A duchess living in Paris experienced the afternoon very differently from a shepherd's wife in the Scottish Highlands. A merchant's daughter in Amsterdam lived differently from a farmer's wife in Bavaria or a lace-maker in Venice. Yet, despite these differences, many afternoons shared something remarkable. They moved slowly. Without electric lights stretching productivity late into the night, daylight itself shaped the pace of life. The brightest hours of the afternoon were valuable, but they were not always rushed. Instead, they offered space for careful work, tasks requiring patience rather than speed. Needles passed gently through cloth. Pens glided across handmade paper. Tea cooled slowly in delicate porcelain cups. Sunlight crept almost imperceptibly across polished wooden floors. Picture yourself standing on a quiet, cobbled street in a European town sometime around the year 1750. The morning market has already ended. Farmers have packed away their carts, leaving only the faint scent of fresh vegetables, herbs, and damp straw behind. Shopkeepers sweep dust from their doorsteps with worn birch brooms, while apprentices carefully stack wooden crates inside dimly lit stores. Church bells echo softly across rooftops. 1, 2, 3 gentle chimes. Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, we're traveling back through the quiet corridors of time to explore an afternoon that has long since slipped away. Imagine that the hurried sounds of the modern world are fading behind you. The glow of screens disappears. The ticking of deadlines falls silent. In their place comes the gentle rustle of linen curtains, stirred by a summer breeze, the distant singing of birds in a garden, and the comforting crackle of a fireplace whose warmth lingers even after midday. Our destination is Europe during the 18th century, a world without electricity, without telephones, without automobiles, and certainly without social media. It was a world where the rhythm of each day was guided by the rising and setting of the sun, where clocks existed but did not dominate every moment, and where afternoons often unfolded with a patience that many of us today can scarcely imagine. Before we begin, take a slow, comfortable breath. Let your shoulders relax. There is nowhere else you need to be. Tonight, history asks nothing of you except that you listen and drift peacefully as we wander through another time. But whose work shaped homes, families, and communities throughout 18th century Europe. As the afternoon slowly advances toward evening, shadows lengthen across fields and village streets. The heat begins to soften. Farmers glance toward the sky, judging how much daylight remains. Inside the cottage where our journey first began, the embroidered flowers have grown into an intricate pattern. Hundreds of careful stitches now cover the cloth, each one almost invisible on its own. Together, they create something beautiful, much like history itself. Individual afternoons may seem ordinary, yet when woven together across generations, they reveal the quiet fabric of everyday life, one stitched patiently by countless women whose names seldom appeared in history books. In many homes, music becomes another companion of the afternoon. A young woman opens the lid of a harpsichord. She sits upon a simple wooden stool. Her fingers rest lightly upon the keys. The first notes emerge gently, filling the room with graceful melodies composed by musicians whose names history still remembers, and many others whose works have long since faded into silence. There is no audience, no applause, no performance to impress strangers. She plays simply because music brings peace. Her younger brother pauses his reading to listen. Her mother smiles while continuing to sew. Even the family cat stretches lazily upon a patch of warm sunlight, seemingly content with the gentle rhythm echoing through the house. Not every afternoon is spent indoors. In the countryside of France, women often gather beneath broad chestnut trees, where the shade offers welcome relief from the summer sun. Children play nearby with simple wooden toys. A dog naps peacefully beside a woven basket. Fresh bread is broken and shared among neighbors. Perhaps someone has brought ripe cherries. Another offers homemade cheese. Someone else arrives carrying a small jug of cider. The gathering is modest, no elaborate celebration. Simply neighbors enjoying each other's company during the calmest hours of the day. Laughter rises softly, then fades. The quiet soon returns. Inside many homes, spinning quietly continues. Before factories transform Europe, nearly every household contributes to producing its own cloth. A spinning wheel turns steadily. Its rhythm is soothing. The soft whir, the gentle pull of fiber, the steady movement of practiced hands. Hour after hour. Many women learn spinning as children. Over time, the motion becomes almost instinctive, allowing conversation, reflection, or quiet thought to accompany the work. Some think about tomorrow's baking. Others remember childhood stories. Some simply enjoy the peaceful repetition itself. Across the English countryside, another woman steps quietly into her garden. Gardens in the 18th century are far more than places of beauty. They provide food, medicine, fragrance, comfort. Rows of rosemary, sage, thyme, mint, and chamomile grow neatly beside colorful flowers. Every plant has a purpose, carefully understood through generations of practical knowledge. She kneels beside a patch of lavender. Running her fingers lightly across the blossoms, she gathers a small bundle to dry indoors. Long after summer has faded, the lavender's fragrance will scent linens stored inside heavy wooden chests. Nearby, bees continue their patient work among the flowers. Their gentle buzzing blends almost perfectly with birdsong and the rustling leaves overhead. No machine interrupts the silence. Only nature speaks. Elsewhere in Europe, another afternoon ritual quietly begins. Tea. Although coffee and chocolate have become fashionable in many cities, tea is slowly gaining popularity among wealthier households. Imported over vast distances from Asia, it remains an expensive luxury. A porcelain teapot rests upon a polished mahogany table. Its delicate blue and white patterns catch the afternoon light. Steam rises gently from the spout. The room fills with the faint fragrance of freshly brewed leaves. Tea is not hurried. Each cup is poured with steady hands. Tiny porcelain cups, almost impossibly thin, are held carefully between fingertips. Conversation remains soft, never loud enough to disturb the peaceful atmosphere surrounding the gathering. A grandmother recalls stories from her youth. A daughter listens attentively while continuing a small piece of embroidery. Outside, leaves shimmer gently in the afternoon breeze. Time seems almost suspended. Before carefully folding the page and sealing it with warm wax, impressed by the family's small seal. The letter now begins a journey that may cross forests, rivers, mountains, and kingdoms before reaching another pair of waiting hands. Not because she has forgotten what she wishes to say, but because writing a letter deserves careful thought. Every word matters. Unlike today, letters cannot be rewritten with the press of a key. Ink stains permanently. Mistakes remain visible unless an entirely new page is begun, and good paper is valuable. She begins slowly. My dearest sister. The graceful curves of each letter reflect years of patient practice. Elegant handwriting is admired throughout Europe, and many young women spend countless hours perfecting their penmanship. Perhaps she writes about the weather. Perhaps she describes the flourishing roses in the family garden. Perhaps she shares quiet news of an upcoming wedding, a new baby, or the safe return of a traveling relative. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, simply the gentle details that weave together an ordinary life. She knows this letter may take many days, perhaps even weeks, to reach its destination. There is no expectation of an immediate reply. Correspondence unfolds at the pace of horses, riverboats, and favorable weather. communication itself teaches patience. When the final sentence is complete, she sprinkles fine sand across the fresh ink to help it dry. As the afternoon settles more deeply over the countryside, the sunlight changes almost without notice. The brilliant brightness of noon softens into a warmer glow, painting the walls of cottages and manor houses with gentle shades of amber. The pace of the day slows still further. Imagine yourself walking along a narrow stone path bordered by lavender bushes and fragrant herbs. Bees wander lazily from blossom to blossom, and somewhere in the distance, a dove calls from the branches of an ancient oak tree. There is no hurry here. The air itself seems content to linger. You approach another home, this one belonging to a prosperous merchant's family in the Dutch Republic. The windows are unusually large, allowing generous streams of daylight to fill every room. Cleanliness is a matter of pride, and every polished wooden surface gleams softly beneath the afternoon sun. Near one of those windows sits a young woman with a sheet of handmade paper before her. She dips a quill into a small glass bottle of ink. For a moment, the golden light grows softer still. Birds settle into hedgerows. Smoke begins rising from cottage chimneys as evening meals are prepared. Across Europe, countless quiet afternoons come gently to an end. No historian records this particular day. No famous battle interrupts it. No royal decree changes its course. It simply passes, one peaceful hour after another. And perhaps that is why it deserves to be remembered. Because history is not only the story of extraordinary moments, it is also the story of ordinary afternoons, filled with patient hands, quiet conversations, shared meals, gentle music, and the comforting rhythm of home. As the last warmth of the sun rests upon the fields, you may find yourself slowing too, breathing a little more deeply, as though you have spent the afternoon among these cottages yourself. The day is not yet over, but evening is drawing near, and in the next chapter, we will follow the soft glow of candlelight as homes prepare for the peaceful close of another 18th century day. In many villages, church bells once again drift across the rooftops. Their sound is slower now, lower, more thoughtful. The bells do not rush. Neither does anyone listening. For centuries, these familiar chimes quietly marked the passing hours, reminding communities that another peaceful afternoon was slowly becoming evening. The women who hear them rarely stop their work. Instead, they simply nod, almost unconsciously. Time continues its gentle journey, just as it always has. Across Europe, the changing afternoon also meant changing light inside the home. Without electric lamps, every household understood the value of daylight. Tasks requiring careful vision were completed before evening. Fine embroidery, detailed lace making, letter writing, reading. As the shadows lengthened, attention gradually shifted toward simpler work. Preparing supper, sweeping floors, arranging firewood, lighting candles. The day itself gently suggested what should come next. There was no alarm reminding anyone, only the sun. Not every afternoon was spent in labor. Among wealthy households, there was often time for reading. Books remained precious possessions. Many were beautifully bound in leather, their pages thick and carefully printed. A young woman reclines beside a tall window overlooking a formal garden. In her hands rests a recently published novel. Perhaps it is a work by Samuel Richardson, perhaps by Henry Fielding, or perhaps a collection of poetry copied lovingly into a personal notebook. She reads slowly, not because she struggles, but because books were meant to be savored. Each page carried ideas from distant minds. Each chapter invited reflection. Occasionally she pauses. Her eyes drift toward the garden. Butterflies move among blooming roses. A fountain sparkles softly in the afternoon light. She smiles quietly before returning to the next page. As the sun continues its slow journey westward, the light outside changes once again. Golden fields begin to shimmer. Tree shadows stretch farther across narrow country roads. In a small village in southern Germany, children slowly make their way home after spending the afternoon helping with simple chores. One carries a basket of eggs. Another carefully balances a small bucket of fresh milk. Their laughter echoes briefly across the village square before fading into the stillness. Nearby, several women sit together beneath a large linden tree. Their sewing baskets rest upon the grass. One embroiders delicate flowers onto a tablecloth. Another repairs a worn linen shirt. A third carefully knits warm stockings for the coming winter. Their hands rarely stop moving. Years of practice have made every motion graceful. Needle, thread, pull gently. Fold, repeat. The rhythm becomes almost like breathing. Modern life often teaches us to fill every quiet moment. The 18th century was different. People were accustomed to simply being together, working side by side, listening to birdsong. Elsewhere, across the rolling countryside of Austria, another quiet afternoon unfolds. The windows of a farmhouse stand open wide. Fresh mountain air carries the scent of pine forests and newly cut hay. Inside, two sisters sit together at a sturdy oak table. Between them lies a basket filled with apples gathered earlier that morning. Each apple is inspected carefully. The finest will be stored for winter. The bruised fruit will become cider. Some will be dried. Nothing is wasted. One sister peels the fruit slowly with a small iron knife. The peel falls in one long, curling ribbon onto the tabletop. The other slices each apple into thin pieces before laying them neatly upon woven trays. Soon they will dry in the gentle warmth near the kitchen hearth. There is very little conversation. Not because they have nothing to say, but because silence itself is comfortable. Modern life often teaches. Imagine yourself entering a comfortable sitting room in a modest home somewhere in northern France around the year 1775. The room is cool despite the summer sun outside. Heavy stone walls keep the heat at bay, while pale linen curtains move gently whenever a breeze slips through the open window. Near the fireplace, although no fire burns today, a grandmother sits in a high-backed wooden chair. A basket of wool rests beside her feet. Gathered around her are three young children. The youngest leans quietly against her knee. The oldest watches with wide, curious eyes. Without opening a book, the grandmother begins to tell a story. It is a tale she herself heard as a little girl. A story of wandering pilgrims, of ancient forests, of kind travelers who offered bread to strangers, of castles hidden beneath morning mist. Many stories of the 18th century were never written down. They traveled instead through voices. Each generation carefully passed them to the next, preserving memories that belonged not to kings or generals, but to ordinary families. Some stories changed a little each time they were told. A forgotten detail became a new adventure. A simple farmer became a clever shepherd. A quiet village became a magnificent town. And no one seemed to mind. The purpose was not perfect accuracy. It was companionship.
By now, the afternoon has settled into its quietest hour. The lively bustle of the morning market is only a distant memory, and the warmth of the day has softened into something gentler. Sunlight pours through old glass windows in long golden ribbons, stretching across wooden floors polished by generations of careful hands. If you pause for a moment, you can almost hear the silence. Not complete silence, of course. There is always the distant chirping of sparrows beneath the eaves, the faint creak of timber settling in the warmth, and somewhere beyond the garden walls, the slow rhythm of a horse pulling a cart along a country lane. These are the sounds of an ordinary afternoon, and it is in these ordinary moments that history often feels closest. As the shadows lengthen, homes throughout Europe begin preparing for the evening meal. Kitchen fires are stirred back to life. Iron pots hang above glowing coals. The comforting aroma of vegetable soup slowly fills the room. Fresh bread is sliced. Butter is placed upon the table. Simple cheese, herbs, and roasted root vegetables complete the meal. For wealthy families, there may be roasted poultry or fresh fish. For farming households, supper remains humble but nourishing. Whatever appears on the table, it is shared together. Meals are among the few moments when nearly everyone pauses their work. Conversation continues quietly. Stories from the day are exchanged. Plans for tomorrow are gently discussed. Outside, the last rays of sunlight begin slipping behind distant hills.
Across France, the sunlight has taken on a rich golden color. Vineyards shimmer beneath the afternoon sky. Workers have already completed the hottest part of the day's labor. Now the pace becomes gentler. Women gather beneath walnut trees to sort baskets of freshly picked grapes. Some remove damaged fruit. Others carefully arrange healthy bunches for transport. Children sit nearby weaving crowns from wildflowers, while elderly grandparents watch with quiet smiles. There is no rush. The harvest follows the rhythm of nature, not the ticking of a clock. Everyone understands that some work simply cannot be hurried.
Back inside another home, this one in northern Italy, music begins to fill the air. A young woman lifts the lid of a square piano, a relatively new instrument becoming fashionable among wealthy European families. She places her hands lightly upon the keys. The first notes are soft, gentle, almost hesitant. Then the melody begins to flow with quiet confidence. Perhaps she plays a simple dance, perhaps a hymn, Perhaps one of the elegant compositions of a young Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, whose music is beginning to delight audiences across Europe. There is no audience gathered to applaud, only family members quietly continuing their own afternoon tasks. Her mother mends clothing near the window. A younger sister practices embroidery. Her father reads a newspaper printed only days earlier. The music does not demand attention. Instead, it becomes part of the home itself, blending with birdsong, distant footsteps, and instead, it becomes part of the home itself, blending with birdsong, distant footsteps, and the whisper of leaves beyond the garden wall. Far away in the Austrian countryside, another afternoon unfolds in a very different way. Here, the grand elegance of a manor house is replaced by the simple beauty of a mountain farmhouse. A woman steps outside carrying a woven basket. She walks slowly toward a vegetable garden bordered by rough wooden fences. Rows of cabbage, onions, carrots, beans, and herbs stretch neatly across the rich, dark soil. She bends to gather fresh parsley. Nearby, a patch of chamomile sways gently in the breeze. Its tiny white flowers will soon be dried and stored for winter, when warm herbal tea offers comfort during long, snowy evenings. Generations of women have passed down this knowledge. Which herbs soothe a cough? Which flowers calm restless sleep? Which leaves help heal small cuts? Their wisdom rarely appears in books. Instead, it lives quietly within families, carried from mother to daughter through years of patient teaching. As she fills her basket, she pauses for a moment. The church bell rings somewhere across the valley. Its sound echoes from hillside to hillside before fading into silence once again.
Its leaves have traveled across oceans, aboard merchant ships, passing through busy ports, before finally reaching homes like this one. Because it is precious, every cup is prepared carefully. Hot water is poured slowly. Steam rises gently into the still air. The fragrance is delicate, earthy, floral, and comforting. A small dish of sugar sits nearby, another expensive treasure brought from distant plantations. Each spoonful is measured thoughtfully. Nothing is wasted. Conversation begins softly. No one raises their voice. The women speak of family news, books they have recently read, the health of elderly relatives, and preparations for the coming harvest festival. There is laughter now and then, but it never disturbs the peaceful atmosphere. Instead, it blends naturally with the quiet clink of porcelain and the cheerful song of birds drifting in through the open window.
Imagine now that you are visiting a country manor in southern England around the year 1782. Unlike the modest cottages we have visited before, this home belongs to a prosperous family. Yet, despite its larger rooms and finer furniture, the afternoon remains surprisingly quiet. Sunlight enters through tall sash windows, illuminating polished oak floors and delicate wallpaper decorated with climbing vines and tiny blue flowers. In the drawing room, several women have gathered for tea. The table is covered with a crisp white linen cloth embroidered by hand many years earlier. Fine porcelain cups rest neatly upon matching saucers. A silver teapot reflects the warm afternoon light like a small mirror. Tea itself is still considered. The afternoon is beginning to lean gently toward evening. The sun no longer stands high above the rooftops. Instead, it hangs lower in the sky,
casting long shadows across gardens, orchards, and quiet village lanes. The bright energy of midday has softened into something calmer, something warmer. This is often the most peaceful hour of the day. If you close your eyes for a moment, you might imagine the air carrying the scent of fresh hay, lavender, and roses warmed by hours of sunshine. Somewhere nearby, swallows glide effortlessly through the sky before disappearing beneath the eaves of an old stone cottage. Nothing seems hurried. Nothing feels urgent. The world simply continues at its own gentle. As another peaceful afternoon comes gently to its close, the village settles into an even deeper calm. Smoke rises lazily from chimneys. Swallows circle overhead before finding their nests. The bells ring once more across fields and rooftops. And somewhere, just beyond an open window, someone begins humming a familiar melody that has been passed from generation to generation. The day is slowly preparing to rest. And so, perhaps, are you. In many homes, candles remain unlit for now. Daylight is still precious. Every remaining beam of sunshine is welcomed through open windows. Women often use these final moments of natural light to complete the last careful stitches of embroidery or finish reading one more page before darkness arrives. The room grows gradually dimmer. Not suddenly, so slowly that it is difficult to notice. The golden light becomes amber. Amber becomes soft bronze. Bronze slowly fades toward twilight. It is one of nature's quietest transformations, one that 18th century families witnessed every single evening.